There is a secret reason he can't let go of you. It is not the softness of your voice or the warmth of your presence, but something far deeper. His shadow has been stirred awake by the one thing he cannot dominate, your silence. Silence does not shout, it does not plead, it does not perform. It exposes. And in that exposure, the shadow king within him begins to tremble. The queen archetype moves quietly, but her presence reshapes the entire room. She does not fight to be heard. She allows space to speak on her behalf. He feels this absence like a wound, because the moment you withdraw your energy, his projection collapses. Do you see it? He only feels your value when the noise is gone, when he can no longer feed on the reactions he once provoked. For a man bound by ego and control, silence is unbearable. He thrives when your voice mirrors his importance, but when that mirror disappears, he faces his own emptiness. Carl Jung called it projection, the way one casts unclaimed fragments of the psyche onto another. He had placed his lost anima, the unseen feminine within, onto you. And by refusing to carry it any longer, you forced him into confrontation with himself. The pain you feel in those moments of withdrawal is real. It is the ache of detachment from the web of emotional manipulation. Trauma bonds do not dissolve quietly. They scream as they break, because they were woven in cycles of chaos and calm, fear and comfort. Have you ever noticed how he became most affectionate right after inflicting pain? That loop was designed to keep you guessing, never safe, always reaching for crumbs. And yet silence interrupts the cycle. It denies the loop oxygen. It feels like drowning to him because his identity relies on your constant engagement. The queen who steps back does not play his game. She embodies boundary without needing to announce it. In that stillness, she gains clarity, while he spirals into desperation. Consider this. Why does he return with intensity the moment you step away? It is not love, it is panic. Without your reflection, he collapses into the abyss of his own shadow. Jung wrote that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. His obsession is not fate. It is the unconscious screaming for recognition. There is a paradox here. The less you give, the more he clings. The quieter you become, the louder his pursuit. This is not romance, this is psychological exposure. Your silence reveals the truth he has hidden even from himself, that his love was never about you, it was about control, projection, and possession. Do you feel how heavy that is? The queen archetype does not rescue him. She does not translate his pain or soothe his collapse. She understands the sovereignty of her choice. Silence is not punishment, it is preservation. It protects her from the erosion of self, from drowning in his shadow. And yet, by choosing it, she becomes his greatest mirror. He cannot escape what she reflects by stepping away. Look closely at your own story. Have you mistaken his desperation for devotion? Have you called his panic proof of love? This is the trap many fall into, the illusion that clinging equals care. In truth, it reveals an emptiness he refuses to face. Your silence tears away the disguise, leaving only the raw wound of his unhealed shadow. There is a secret power here. Silence is not passive, it is magnetic. It draws truth out of hiding. It makes visible the manipulation you once overlooked. It gives you a vantage point above the storm. When you no longer answer to his chaos, you see the architecture of his control for what it really is, a fragile castle built on your compliance. And yet, silence is also a question. What happens when he is left with nothing but himself? Will he confront the shadow king within, or will he run to another mirror, another woman, another source of reflection? You may never know. That part of his journey is not yours to control. But your journey, this is where the descent begins. The first act of liberation is awareness. The queen recognizes the trap, feels the ache of breaking free, and chooses clarity over confusion. The silence you hold is the opening of the labyrinth, a path that will test you with echoes of doubt, yet lead you to power. Do you see yourself here? Do you feel the weight of his pursuit when you step back? This is not the end of the story, only the first unveiling. The silence you chose has unlocked his shadow, but it has also unlocked the beginning of your own awakening. The question now is not whether he can handle it, but whether you can remain sovereign in the face of his unraveling. He thinks your silence is weakness, but the truth is, silence has become your shield, and now the sentinel awakens. The sentinel is not a warrior who strikes first. She is the guardian who sees through deception, who understands that protection is not always force but vigilance. When he lashes out at your withdrawal, when he tries to provoke, accuse, or lure you back into reaction, the sentinel watches with unshaken eyes. This phase is where his patterns intensify. The narcissistic father within him emerges, cloaked in righteousness, demanding loyalty. He tells you that you are cold, that you've changed, that you owe him an explanation. But the sentinel knows this is not truth. This is projection, his wounded ego begging to be stabilized by your energy. Do you feel the weight of that? The burden of being the emotional scaffolding for someone who has never learned to stand on his own. The sentinel stands at the threshold of boundaries, and boundaries are not lines you draw on the ground. They are living structures, reinforced by your resolve. They are the unseen walls that guard your peace. He will push against them, he will test them, because his survival depends on collapsing them. Gaslighting becomes his weapon. He will twist memory, rewrite events, and make you question your own perception. Has he ever made you feel insane for pointing out what you clearly saw? That was not love. It was control disguised as confusion. Carl Jung taught that the shadow resists illumination. It prefers denial. And when you hold silence instead of justification, you break the game of gaslighting. The sentinel does not argue. She does not waste her energy proving reality. She simply observes. Every contradiction he speaks is noted, every false apology recorded not with words but with clarity. This is where vigilance becomes liberation. But the struggle is not only external. Inside you, the old wounds stir. Childhood echoes return, the fear of abandonment, the need for approval, the voice that says you must explain yourself to be safe. These are the roots of trauma that kept you tethered to him. The sentinel does not banish them. She names them. Naming is power. When you see the wound, you stop confusing it with truth. When you realize the longing for approval was never about him, but about a father who never saw you, a caregiver who dismissed you, you reclaim the story. Pause here. Imagine standing before him as he rages or withdraws, accusing or pleading. The sentinel knows none of this defines you. His storm is his own. Do you feel how that changes everything? To witness without absorbing, to stand without bending, to know that his shadow is not your responsibility. This moment is where strategy emerges. Instead of defending, you redirect. Instead of explaining, you anchor. Instead of absorbing, you reflect. The sentinel speaks few words, but each is clear. I will not continue this conversation if you distort reality. I choose not to argue about what I know I experienced. These are not weapons, they are boundaries embodied. He will not like this. The lost child within him may appear now, masked as vulnerability. He may beg, confess, speak of loneliness. And here is the cruel paradox. The part of you most tempted to return is not the part of you in the present, but the wounded child inside who aches to soothe others. The sentinel sees this clearly. She recognizes when compassion becomes self-betrayal. Do you recognize it too? How many times have you given comfort only to be hurt again? Awareness deepens here. His need for you is not intimacy, it is dependency. Your silence and your boundaries expose the truth. He is unable to hold his own inner world. You have been carrying it for him. Every time you justified, explained, forgave too quickly, You held what was never yours to carry. The sentinel places it back in his hands, even if he drops it. There is an empowerment in this shift. It is not loud, it is steady. The more he accuses, the more you see the script repeating. The more he pleads, the more you realize it is not about you but about his terror of facing himself. This awareness creates space, and in that space you begin to breathe differently. Do you feel the difference already? The inhale that is not watched, the exhale that is not policed. The sentinel does not destroy him, nor does she rescue him. She protects what is sacred, your psyche, your energy, your soul. And though he will claim you are cold, distant, cruel, the truth is that you are becoming whole. Wholeness requires separation from what fractures you. Silence was the first step. Boundaries are the second. Still, the journey is not complete. The sentinel guards the gates, but another force waits inside you, the flame, the spark of transformation. It will demand not only protection, but ignition. And when it rises, the silence will no longer be just a shield. It will become the fire that burns away illusion. The silence held him at bay, the boundaries stopped his reach, but the flame rises to do what still remains unfinished. The flame is not a flicker of anger. It is the alchemy of transmutation. It consumes what is false so that truth can stand alone. She feels it now, deep within. This urge not just to guard, but to burn through the web of illusion that NCE held her captive. The flame is dangerous, yes, but without it, no transformation can endure. When the Shadow King senses this fire, he panics. His kingdom has always depended on her silence, her compliance, her willingness to cradle his wounds as if they were her own. Now the flame refuses that duty. His tactics shift. Where he once accused, he now flatters. Where he once raged, he now promises redemption. "I'll change," he whispers. "Don't give up on me." Do you recognize the seduction hidden here? The hope that maybe this time he will become who you dreamed he was. This is where the flame burns most fiercely, against the temptation of fantasy. Jung warned of anima and animus projections, the illusions we cast upon others to complete ourselves. She had projected onto him the savior, the partner, the eternal beloved. But projections dissolve in fire, and when the flame burns, she sees him not as he could be, but as he is. A man who confuses possession with love, control with care, need with devotion. The question now becomes piercing. Do you love the man or the story you once told yourself about him? The flame demands honesty, not only with him but within. She sees her own patterns, the times she mistook chaos for passion, silence for depth, pain for destiny. This awareness hurts more than his betrayal because it asks her to confront the mirror within. But the flame does not soften. It clears. It purifies. In the ashes of self-deception, she finds the first ember of her power. Do you feel the intensity of that fire inside yourself? The urge to end the cycle, even if it means walking through loneliness. That is the crucible of transformation. For the flame teaches that empowerment is not comfort, it is sacrifice. The sacrifice of illusions, of false hope, of the story that love must come wrapped in pain. She begins to see. What she called love was often an echo of her wounds. His cruelty was the familiar language of old scars. To love him was to replay what hurt her most. The flame speaks differently than the sentinel. The sentinel says no. The flame says enough. Enough to the lies, enough to the endless apologies, enough to the cycle of betrayal and forgiveness. In this word enough, there is fire. It does not need explanation. It does not negotiate. It severs. And though he may scream, though he may weep, though he may cling, the flame refuses to shrink. Notice the paradox. Her silence wounded him more than her words ever could, but her fire terrifies him beyond reason. He sees that he no longer controls the story. His lost child collapses into despair, his trickster mocks her defiance, his shadow king curses her distance. Yet none of these masks ignite her pity anymore. The fire consumes pity, leaving only clarity. Jung spoke of individuation as the union of opposites, the integration of shadow and light. The flame is the necessary descent into the underworld of self-deception, the burning away of illusions that block individuation. She is not cruel to him, though he believes she is. She is loyal to herself, perhaps for the first time. Loyalty to the self is always branded as betrayal by those who depended on your submission. Have you lived that truth, felt the guilt that was never yours, carried the shame of another's fragility? This fire is not reckless, it is disciplined. Like the alchemist, she knows that transformation must be contained. If the fire burns too wildly, it destroys indiscriminately. So she directs it inward too. She burns through her excuses, her fears, her longing to be chosen by a man who never chose her in truth. She burns the hope that love could be begged for. The flame leaves only essence behind. And here in the embers, something shifts. She realizes she does not need his apology to be free. She does not need his recognition to be seen. She does not need his approval to be whole. These needs were illusions, too, forged in the wounds of childhood. As the flame consumes them, she begins to feel something startling: lightness. The air is different when the weight of false hope burns away. But the flame's work is not yet complete. Fire clears the ground, but what grows next must be seen through reflection. The mirror waits, for it is one thing to burn what is false in him. It is another to gaze into oneself and confront what has allowed the cycle to live for so long. She has seen his shadow. Now she must meet her own. The fire has scorched the illusions, yet the ground it cleared cannot stay barren. In the quiet aftermath, the mirror appears. Not a delicate glass, but a polished surface of the soul, cold and merciless in its clarity. She stands before it, stripped of excuses, stripped of the projections that once made him seem larger than life. Now, the only gaze left to confront is her own. The mirror does not flatter. It does not lie. It reflects the truth she once fled, the patterns of choosing men who echo her earliest wounds, the cycle of chasing validity. On in places it was never offered, the silent bargain she made just to feel loved. Each reflection is sharp. Each memory cuts. Do you see yourself here, drawn again and again to what hurts, as though pain itself carried the promise of redemption? Jung said what we deny in ourselves returns as fate. And here it is. Her fate, repeating, disguised as romance, replayed in the men she trusted, magnified in the one who broke her most. The mirror forces her to ask, was it truly him who betrayed her, or the part of her that betrayed herself by refusing to see? This question burns hotter than his lies, because it places responsibility not just outward but inward. Yet it is also the key to freedom. The mirror reveals the anima wounded in her depths, the feminine soul that yearned for union but settled for chains. She sees how she dimmed her voice to keep peace, how she silenced her needs to avoid abandonment, how she tolerated cruelty because somewhere in her past, cruelty and love were indistinguishable. The mirror shows not only the lover but the child who longed to be held and instead learned to endure. Do you feel that recognition in your own story? Here, the mirror does something unexpected. It does not condemn, it reveals. And revelation is the doorway to power. When she sees the truth of her patterns, she no longer walks blind. She begins to understand why silence was her first weapon, why fire became her ally. These were not random acts of survival. They were archetypal forces moving her toward individuation. The queen set boundaries, the sentinel guarded, the flame purified, and now the mirror integrates. Integration demands stillness. She resists the urge to turn away from her reflection, though every instinct tells her to escape. He was easier to battle, for his flaws were visible, but her own shadows, they are subtle, entwined with her identity. The mirror whispers, if you wish to be free, you must love the woman staring back at you, not the fantasy of who you wanted her to be. This is no soft affirmation. It is a demand, sharp as glass. Do you see the paradox? To unlock power, she must embrace weakness. To rise, she must admit where she once fell. The mirror asks her to own the hunger that drew her into his arms, to forgive the blindness that kept her there, and to honor the strength that finally led her away. Without this ownership, the cycle continues. With it, the cycle ends. In the stillness of the mirror, she begins to practice a different kind of silence. Not the silence of suppression, but the silence of listening. Listening to the voice beneath the noise, the voice that was drowned out by his drama, his demands, his endless storms. She hears now the voice that whispers, "You are enough as you are." And though the words are fragile, they carry more weight than all his proclamations of love. Her reflection shifts. She sees not just the wounds, but the resilience woven through them. The child survived. The woman endured. The queen ruled. The sentinel protected, the flame burned, and now in the mirror they converge. For the first time, she recognizes herself not as broken but as whole in the making. Wholeness is not perfection, it is integration. He too begins to sense the change. When he tries to provoke her, her silence is different now. It no longer hides fear, it radiates indifference. When he tries to lure her back with promises, her eyes reflect only truth. He sees himself in that gaze, perhaps for the first time, the Shadow King stripped of illusion, and it terrifies him. A man cannot manipulate a woman who has seen herself. The mirror closes with a riddle she cannot yet solve. It shows her face, yes, but behind it, a shimmer, a figure waiting to emerge. Something beyond reflection. Something that rises from ashes. The image is faint but undeniable, wings. The phoenix waits. The image of wings flickers in the mirror, and soon the fire that once burned her becomes the fire that lifts her. The phoenix arrives, not as a gentle rebirth, but as a violent shedding of skin. Every layer of false identity, every script written by his voice, every lie she once wore as her second skin cracks and falls away. The ashes gather at her feet, and from within the dust, a figure rises luminous, unchained. Rebirth is not polite, it is not tender. It tears through the old self with merciless force. The phoenix knows that to rise, something must die. The belief that suffering is proof of love, the illusion that silence must always mean submission, the secret loyalty to wounds that once defined her. These attachments dissolve in the blaze, and what remains is essence. Pure, untamed essence. Can you imagine what that feels like? To no longer be driven by pain, but by power. The man who once bound her senses the shift. His Shadow King is accustomed to battle, to games of control, to the push and pull that fed his ego. But what does he do when there is nothing left to grip? When she does not does not justify, does not even hate. He finds himself standing in front of ashes, reaching for smoke, realizing too late that the woman he fed on has become untouchable. The phoenix does not seek revenge. Fire has no need for vengeance. Its existence is enough. Its radiance exposes his shadows without effort. In her rising, she forces him to confront his own collapse. What he once mistook for weakness was transformation. What he once mocked as silence was preparation. She has stepped beyond the script of his drama, and in doing so, left him trapped in his own endless cycle. Do you see the liberation here? When you no longer need his downfall for your freedom, you have already won. But the phoenix's rebirth is not just about leaving him, it is about entering herself. For the first time, she experiences the paradox Jung whispered of, that the greatest treasure lies in the cave you fear to enter. She entered, she burned, she shattered, and now she holds the treasure of individuation, not perfection, not eternal bliss, but wholeness. And wholeness changes everything. The fire that once destroyed is now creative. It fuels vision. She begins to see possibilities she had long forgotten, the friendships she silenced for him, the passions she abandoned, the dreams that once seemed childish but now feel sacred. Rising from ashes does not just restore what was lost, it awakens what was never allowed to live. Imagine the woman who reclaims not just survival, but expansion. That is the promise of the phoenix. There is wonder in this moment, but also gravity, for the phoenix must choose carefully where to fly. Fire is potent, but unfocused fire can scorch what it seeks to nurture. She must learn not only how to rise, but how to steer. This is the work of discernment, of boundaries refined not by fear, but by wisdom. When she speaks now, her words burn away falsehood. When she loves, her love cannot be manipulated because it flows from choice, not hunger. He may linger, circling the ashes, trying to call her back into the ruins. But the phoenix no longer moves on his axis. His shadows no longer define her light. This is not indifference born of numbness. It is freedom born of clarity. The more she rises, the smaller he appears until he becomes what he always was, a mirror of lessons, not a master of fate. And once the lesson is absorbed, the teacher disappears. Do you feel the weight of that? The end of a cycle is not thunderous, it is quiet. The silence she chose in the beginning has now transformed into the silence of flight, of being above the noise. The phoenix soars, and in her flight she glimpses another figure ahead, not of flame, but of serpent, winding and ancient, promising wisdom deeper than fire. The journey is not finished. The rise is only a passage. The fire fades, and in its glow something older stirs. From beneath the ashes, a shape begins to move with a rhythm that is not destruction but wisdom. The serpent appears, coiling slowly, eyes unblinking, its presence neither benevolent nor cruel. It is the archetype of knowledge that has survived ages of exile, the truth buried deep in the unconscious, the reminder that transformation is not only about flight, it is about descent into wisdom. The serpent does not flatter. It does not soothe, it reveals. Its message is clear. The fire of the phoenix gave her freedom, but without knowledge, fire burns out. The serpent whispers of cycles, of the endless loop between predator and prey, between obsession and escape, between silence and storm. How many times has humanity lived the same pattern under different names? How many times has she mistaken intensity for intimacy, control for connection? These are questions that coil around her, pressing for honesty. Here, the serpent demands that she confront not him, but herself. This is where shadow work sharpens, the hidden part of her that tolerated control, the wound that mistook his obsession for devotion, the part of her that once equated being chosen with being worthy. The serpent strikes not with venom, but with clarity. Do you feel it? The discomfort of seeing that liberation is not only about leaving his grip, but also about dismantling her own unconscious consent. The masculine shadow king collapses in her absence, but the real challenge is subtler. It lies in refusing the temptation to reenact the same drama with another mask, another man, another set of shadows. The serpent reminds her that without integration, the phoenix's rise is temporary. Without wisdom, the ashes will one day call her back. This is why the serpent's knowledge is dangerous. It strips away every excuse, every illusion, until only raw truth remains. And what is that truth? That love is not proved by suffering. That boundaries are not walls against intimacy, but gates of choice. That silence is not submission, but a sacred weapon when wielded with clarity. That the feminine does not exist to soften the wounds of broken men, but to embody the sovereignty of her own being. The serpent coils tighter, offering its final lesson. Freedom is not the absence of control from others. Freedom is mastery of one's own inner labyrinth. You feel the shift here, don't you? He is no longer the central figure. His shadows, his projections, his collapse, they were catalysts, not destiny. The serpent shows her that the true battlefield was always within. Every projection she absorbed, every distortion she untangled, every silence she held became the path into her own unconscious. In Jung's language, this is individuation, not becoming what he wanted, not even becoming what society praised, but becoming whole. The serpent is feared because it is misunderstood. It teaches not through comfort, but through paradox. It is both poison and medicine, both death and rebirth, both temptation and wisdom. And so it asks, will she carry the venom as a wound, or will she distill it into wisdom? That choice marks the difference between endless repetition and lasting transformation. Do you see yourself here? The moments where pain could have become bitterness, but instead became clarity. As she listens, her gaze shifts from him entirely. She no longer asks why he lied, why he broke, why he obsessed. The real question becomes, why did I stay? Why did I silence my instincts? Why did I carry pain as proof of love? The serpent does not condemn her for these questions. It honors them, because in the asking, she weaves new skin. The old identity cracks, and what emerges is a self no longer defined by survival, but by self-reclamation. The man, now ghost-like in her story, senses the final severance. He realizes he no longer resides in her mind. He no longer triggers, no longer shapes her choices, no longer defines the architecture of her silence. She has entered the serpent's labyrinth of knowledge, and there he cannot follow. He is left to wrestle with his shadows alone, while she begins to understand that her greatest power is not in rising above him, but in sinking deep into her own truth. The serpent uncoils, leaving behind not fear but wisdom etched into her being. Its parting gift is the path ahead, the labyrinth vast and sacred, where every choice leads deeper into the center of her soul. She steps forward, not with fire, not with flight, but with the steady power of one who knows that true liberation is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of self-mastery. The labyrinth waits, silent yet infinite, not built of stone but of choices, of echoes of the patterns she once mistook for love. This is the final archetype, the vast structure of the unconscious, the place where illusions dissolve into truth. Here, every corridor is a memory, every turn a question, every chamber an echo of what she once endured. But unlike before, she is no longer lost. She enters not as prey, but as sovereign. The labyrinth is not his domain. He never made it this far because he feared the silence it required. Men like him prefer noise, projection, and control. In silence, their shadows grow too loud, too vivid. That is why he clung to her so desperately. Her presence kept the labyrinth at bay. Her silence, however, forced him inward. And that silence was not absence. It was initiation. She had walked him to the threshold of his own darkness and stepped away. For her, the labyrinth is not punishment but revelation. It is the final proving ground where she must face the last illusion, that her healing depends on his apology, his change, his recognition. In truth, none of these doors lead to him. Every path folds inward, spiraling toward the center. The labyrinth teaches her the difference between closure and completion. Closure depends on him. Completion depends only on her. Which do you secretly crave, his validation or your wholeness? As she walks, figures from the past appear like shadows against the walls. The narcissistic father with his cold demands, the trickster with his false promises, the lost child with his helpless eyes, the shadow king with his hunger for control. They flicker like ghosts, testing her, whispering temptations to repeat the old scripts. But she does not stop. She sees them for what they are, fragments, projections, unhealed shadows of masculine distortion. They do not define her path. The labyrinth demands endurance, not escape. There is no shortcut, no ladder out, only the slow discipline of walking inward. Each turn is a stripping away, of fantasies, of shame, of blame. Do you feel it? That quiet terror of realizing that freedom is not found in someone else's change, but in your own final surrender to truth. That is the weight of the labyrinth. It holds no lies, no flattery, only mirrors of the self. At the center, there is no monster, no minotaur to slay. There is only silence, pure, unbroken. This is where the journey ends and where it begins again. In Jung's language, this is individuation completed, the self no longer fragmented by shadows, no longer seeking wholeness through another's wounds. She discovers that the center was always her, not the woman who fought him, not the woman who fled him, but the woman who no longer needs him to define her. This is the paradox of the labyrinth. You never escape it by running. You escape it by embracing it, by realizing that its walls are not prison but protection, not maze but map. Every turn she once cursed becomes proof of her resilience. Every silence she once feared becomes proof of her power. The labyrinth has no exit because it was never meant to be left behind. It is meant to be carried within as the architecture of her wisdom. The final initiation is simple yet immense. She stands at the center and breathes. No demand, no apology, no chase, no revenge, just breath. The man who once haunted her story has no place here. He becomes irrelevant not because she hates him, but because she no longer needs him to understand herself. That is the true liberation, when his shadow no longer shapes her light. Can you imagine what that feels like? The peace of no longer being defined by the wound. From here she steps out, not out of the labyrinth, but out of illusion, into life lived with sovereignty, clarity, depth. The queen has set her crown. The sentinel has guarded her truth. The flame has ignited her courage. The mirror has revealed her depths. The phoenix has freed her from ashes. The serpent has gifted her wisdom. And the labyrinth has completed her. The circle closes, the archetypes dissolve, leaving behind the woman whole unto herself. Now imagine the woman who emerges. She no longer explains her silence. It speaks for her. She no longer bargains with shadows. They vanish in her presence. She no longer bends to control. Her boundaries are firm yet fluid, sacred yet strong. She walks not with the weight of survival, but with the ease of embodiment. This is the woman who has faced every archetype and found herself at the center of the story all along. And so, her journey ends as yours continues. Will you remain bound to the ghosts of projection, or will you walk into your own labyrinth? Will you keep demanding closure from the past, or will you choose completion in the present? The choice is always before you. The woman who sees the truth chooses her peace.